And the other thing too about the F-14, it had that huge swing wing, big wingspan. It had a tendency to glide a little bit. It could have used a little more drag. The speed brake was between the two vertical tails. It could be a little bit more draggy in that. And there was also one down below, I think, on the underside. But in that airplane, again, it had a slower approach speed. The wing loading, I think, was a little bit less, so it got bounced around a little bit more. Yeah, it could be, if you got behind it a little bit, it could be a handful and not as stable as like an F4 or an A4 behind the boat.
Jumping forward just on this thread, landing,
Yeah.
can you compare and contrast that to the F-14? I mean, by that
Sure.
point, obviously you got more reps under your belt, but is it a different beast? Is it easier?
No, it's a lot harder. In fact, one of the
Right.
lead safes was an F-14 guy, and so we came back, and he brought us back, and that was great. And you celebrated at the club that night, and he said, "Okay, so if you end up F-14s, you got to remember never get behind on that thing, because it was a turbofan TF-30 engine, which was kind of new, and this is the A model. I only flew the A model, and so if you ever let them spool back, you're gonna have a hard time getting them back powered up, and that was always the greatest concern behind the boat with one of the F-14s. If guys got high or if they got fast, they make a huge correction by bringing the throttles back to idle, and they don't catch it, and I was an LSO in my fighter squadron, and so you would watch the black smoke coming out the back as the guy is making the corrections, and man, if that smoke disappeared, you knew, and of course you're hearing them also that it's back on the power. As you want to make a call to get that power back on. And the other thing too about the F-14, it had that huge swing wing, big wingspan. It had a tendency to glide a little bit. It could have used a little more drag. The speed brake was between the two vertical tails. It could be a little bit more draggy in that. And there was also one down below, I think, on the underside. But in that airplane, again, it had a slower approach speed. The wing loading, I think, was a little bit less, so it got bounced around a little bit more. Yeah, it could be, if you got behind it a little bit, it could be a handful and not as stable as like an F4 or an A4 behind the boat. But so those were kind of things to watch for flying it. So and during our training, that was always brought out and something to look at. And you end up going to the F-14 training squadron, you're doing the same thing. I mean, we did a ton of FCLPs. Now, training command, it's daylight only, right? You don't go out there at night. They wait until you end up going to the fleet squadron, a fleet training squadron, before they take you to the boat at night. And that's a whole different experience, as you can imagine, compared to what daylight will look like.
Yeah, no NVGs. I mean, night is tough even with NVGs, but you obviously can't land with NVGs. So even still, it's interesting that you don't do that in a training squadron. I mean, I know the fleet, I guess the FTR, that we call fleet training placement squadron, a little bit different than the Air Force, but
right.
That's where you're getting your follow-on top-off training.
Right. So, you ended up a couple other things, which was kind of unusual for my TA4 training to wrap that up. So the boat, you were kind of always, if the boat was available, that took priority. So no matter where you were in your syllabus, except for, of course, the very beginning portion, but I'm sure there was, I forget exactly how many hours or whatever you would have needed, but hey, if the boat's available, we're discontinuing all the other training. We're going to take you, warm you up, and then take you out to the boat because, it's just going to be out there in the Gulf. And for me, that kind of occurred before the ACM finished up. And so I'm supposed to get my wings on this one specific day, but I still got a hop to do. I still got to do an ACM ride in order to get my wings, and the weather's not too good. So what they did was they put a surgrad, which is like a FAPE in the Air Force. So these are the guys that get their wings, but they retain them in terms of staying on and being instructors. So yeah, one of the great guys, one of the great surgrads, in the squadron, gets in the back, and we go out and fly the hop, which basically was, I think we could have taken off, and if I did one hard turn, they probably would have completed it. I called it good,
Right.
And then come back and do a GCA, which was a thing. We don't, the Navy doesn't have ILS. Their trainers is all ground controlling guy, and so that's kind of a different way to come, to land through the goo. So ended up checking the block, come back in, get the GCA, pull back into the chocks, and I think it took an hour to go change, take a shower, put on my dress uniform, and I'm in my winging ceremony within an hour and a half after landing, that kind of thing. So I remember that was kind of a big day and a big blur, to say the least. Yeah. So off to the F-124 I go, the F-14 RAG or FRS as we, however you want to call it. And so there it was like learning to fly the F-14. Now, again, in the F-14, you got a RIO with a radar in the back. So there's no pilot to bail you out if you goon something up in the front seat. And so I want to say the first couple flights, they do put a pilot in the back and, kind of to walk you through whatever the syllabus is and getting used to the airplane. But then after that, it's a RIO who's one of the instructors sitting in the back. And, those guys are wealth of knowledge. They've been to the fleet. They've been out there on a cruise or two, and they certainly earn their pay dealing with what they had to sit through sometimes, with a new pilot up front. And those stick to really bail them out. You can only talk to them. And, even as a RIO, there's some things you just don't know about up front, flying an airplane or whatever. Yeah. So, a typical two-ship flight, you got in the lead, it's the instructor pilot with a student RIO. And then -2, it's a student pilot with an instructor RIO in the back. And that's usually the way, everything was played out when you had a two-plane formation. So
it's interesting. Our F-15 schoolhouse, I think right now, is in the process of merging, where you're having, for the official term, right? But you used to have an F-15C schoolhouse, all single-seat mentality. The F-15E schoolhouse, which was, is the Strike Eagle with a Wizzo. Mm-hmm. And now we have the EX version coming online, which is going to be this hybrid of sometimes single pilot, sometimes with a Wizzo complement. And now they're going through this merging process of a combined syllabi, or however we want to phrase it, where you're going to have C model, E model, and EX model all coming together as they sort through that. Again, my experience in F-16, it makes it super easy when you're just the mayor of Cockpit City and not having to...
Yeah.
It would sometimes be nice to have someone back there helping out. Other times,
yeah,
well, it's on me.
And of course, I never flew in combat, but at the time you had some Vietnam experience people in the senior levels, and man, that extra set of eyeballs, was always appreciated in a conflict in an air combat arena. So, and those guys. There's some guys that are really good and they learn to kind of fly the airplane. And you can imagine your first BFM ride, with a new student up front, trying to talk eyes on to the bandit or whatever, and all the other things that go through in maneuvering the airplane. And just riding along, if he gets high alpha, high AOA, slow airspeed, and the thing departs, it was... I think they knew where the ejection seat handle was at all times if needed. But yeah.
Did you ever depart in F-14?
I think so. Meaning, I think I did. No, that airplane.
I saw it in Top Gun.
Yeah, nothing like that. Thank goodness. So the engines were always a thing to be kind of concerned about. TF-30s. They weren't bulletproof. And, if you got slow and you stalled one and the other one's in full blower, you could see where you had asymmetric thrust and that could get away from you, whatever. I do remember cross-controlling the airplane and using a lot of rudder at times, but as long as you were cognizant of where the alpha was, it seemed to be okay. But you're always kind of a little tentative. It wasn't like with the digital flight control system in the F-16, like we know you're asking it for whatever you want and it'll give you what it can. The F-14, there wasn't any fly-by-wire in there for the most part. There was some augmentation that would help out for stability, but yeah. And then you'd learn to cheat the fly airplane when you went to the fleet, because in the RAG, it would be you don't do anything with the flaps. You get kind of a slow flight, whether it's a scissors or a loop or whatever. As soon as you got to the fleet squadron and some of the guys are really good, they let you clue in. You probably could crack a little bit of flap in there while you're out, and that's going to give you whatever needed to beat your opponent, the other F-14 you're fighting against in the squadron, type of thing. But if that was done wrong, a torque tube could break, and then maintenance has got to fix that, and that whole thing. So, yeah, no, I enjoyed flying that airplane. So
yeah, I would imagine. And obviously, you didn't fly any combat. Different time period. I mean, you were worried about the Soviets rolling through Europe, and I think you did have a couple of encounters, at least.
Yeah. So
Soviets.
Yeah, the one thing that I, probably before that occurs, I end up going through, like I said, finishing up the RAG, and again, the big experience of landing at night on a carrier was a whole thing in itself. And again, God bless the guy in the back to ride through that for the first time. So we get our night landings and all that other stuff, and then you end up going to a fleet squadron, and I kind of got out before I got involved in some sort of leadership in squadron specifically, but it was related to me. It was like a draft, NFL draft, where these fleet squadrons would get your reputation of the different RAG students. And if somebody got a kind of a high performer, one squadron the last go around, they kind of were at the bottom, and then it ends up, trying to disperse the talent pool best it can across the Pacific squadrons at the time at Miramar. And I ended up going into the F2. The squadron skipper was the XO at Top Gun when I was there as stash ensign. There were two 04s that were on the staff, so I was kind of a known quantity, and I ended up going to that squadron. And so that was that was fantastic, because again, just those three quality individuals, and there were, everybody in that squadron was awesome, but it was good to be placed in a squadron, and the F2 did really well when I was there. They were one of their top missile squadron. We did well there. Yeah. So I went there, and within about a year, I ended up going to Top Gun as a student, probably one of the most junior pilots to go through as a student. I think they needed a waiver at the time, if memory serves. So I was able to do that fairly early in my fleet tour and go through. Things I remember about that, Rain, as a student at the time, it was all air to air. Now when you go through, you've got air to mud. It's an aspect doing strikes and all that. The F-14 was a pure air-to-air fighter, much to its demise. As politics played out, you start seeing the F-18, the do-it-all airplane, and you ended up seeing funding going there, and then the F-14 being sunsetted back in the early 2000s. Even though they started to drop bombs and stuff at the later years, I think the die was cast.